Welcome and good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first DCFG webinar on this 11th of December. Nice Thursday here in Germany, gray skies, but now we're going to brighten the day a little bit. Today we want to talk about the DQMH Configuration Toolkit, a product that has been around for some time and in which we put a lot of effort to make it live up to your and our expectations. So today will all be about configuration and configuration management. First, I think it's worth talking about why configuration even matters, right? I mean, let's talk about that for 1 minute. I guess we all know that in any non-trivial LabVIEW application, configuration sooner or later becomes a part of the system's architecture. It's no longer just a file on disk or anything like that. And even more importantly, as systems grow, as you add more modules, as you add more test stations, as you have more deployment variations, it's clear and it's obvious that configuration data will be affected. First of all, the reliability, right? We must make sure that systems start with the configuration they're supposed to read in. We must make sure that we can manage and that we have a grips on the configuration data. Second, of course, maintainability. We want to know where configuration lives. We want to be able to identify which configuration is needed. We want to avoid scattering of configuration all across our application. We want to send scalability. When we add new machines, test systems, test stations, we do not want to rewrite any code, right? It should not require us to change the code when we duplicate configuration settings. And lastly, of course, the people that work with the systems, the technicians, the engineers, the users, the operators, even the developers, of course, we want safe, validated entry points where we can change configuration without breaking the application. I guess that's a very important part of the whole thing. So moving on to what are the challenges for configuration data? I guess we've all seen one or the other of these items that I'm going to mention here, because these are ubiquitous to the software development topic. We have scattered hard code values in our code, maybe. That's information that we might or might not have been aware that it will change in the future or not. We put constants on the block diagram. We have type defs, etc. So all of these things lead to duplication, to divergence, and these are risks we need to deal with. We have initialization clutter, right, where we have data all over the place. We do not want that. Lack of versioning and migration, we all have seen that, where we need to update configuration data, and that is a pain. And then missing validation logic. Obviously, we have end users tinker with our configuration data, breaking the application. And I'm not even starting to talk about difficulty in supporting multi-project or multi-station deployments. So with these reasons, right, it makes sense to invest into configuration. We want a system that is straightforward to use, that makes it easy for us and for our users. And this is why the DQMH Consortium has been working on the DCFG, the DQMH Configuration Toolkit. So if we look at what it is on the surface of things, it is a familiar dialog, right? So we modeled it after the LabVIEW options dialog. I guess if you see the screenshot of that one, that will look familiar. Now, going the next step, if we look at the UI of the DCFG, that is a very familiar look and feel. We have a window. On the left-hand side, we have a list of configuration items. On the right-hand side, we have whatever configuration pane those things need. So in a nutshell, what the DCFG does is it adds configuration support to not only DQMH modules, but it also adds support to non-DQMH libraries, as much as even to things on the project level itself. So if you need these things, DCFG is the product for you. The next thing that DCFG does, seeing as it is an integrated system, is it ensures that modules initialize, that they register for, and that they update the configuration updates correctly. Again, a thing that you would have to do manually if you wanted that. The DQMH Configuration Toolkit is there for you to do these things. And obviously, I guess it goes without saying that it comes with an API tester, the DCFG main UI being a DQMH module itself. And the API tester helps you with setting up DCFG, with testing it and working with it as you know it from DQMH. Okay, so far, maybe you are not just yet hanging on the edge of your seats, I guess. Let me talk about the key features of DCFG. The key features, first and foremost, I think, is that we implemented it in a way that we can have customizable panes for editor aesthetics. What does that mean? Well, it means that the DCFG is a product, yes, but it is customizable, of course, because for our customer projects, we want to be able to, adjust the UI slightly, maybe have different colors, have different fonts, these kinds of things. DCFG does give you that. That's not something that's easily achieved. And you will probably relate with me when I say that this takes a little bit of time to implement if we have to do that manually. Now, the second of the key features I want to point out are the different views that DCFG supports. So you can imagine that if you look at your configuration UI, there are situations where you want to present something to your end user, the operator of the machine, and that will definitely look different to whatever configuration view an administrator, an engineer, a software developer wants to see. And DCFG supports those views out of the box. You can combine them with user credentials or other mechanics to select which view to present to the user, depending on what configuration data you want to make available through the UI. Again, I want to stress the fact that this is not something that comes easily and cheaply and takes some time to implement if you have to do it from scratch. The third key feature I want to highlight is that DCFG supports presets for different users or scenarios. So you can take configuration data for your whole application across all modules, even across the project, and you can store these combinations of configuration data as a preset. You can store that to disk, you can load different presets, and you can manage the combinations of configuration data that way very easily. Again, DCFG comes with the mechanics to do that. You have UI buttons, you have UI features that allow you to easily and very simple way to store and load those presets. And then the fourth key feature I want to highlight of DCFG, I guess that is also expected from a product from the DQMH consortium, is that DCFG automates the integration with scripting tools. You will not be surprised to hear and then to witness later on that we do have scripting tools implemented that help you with either adding DCFG capability to existing code or even start out from templates to start projects with built-in DCFG. Functionality. The next question, I guess you will ask, even before having seen the demo, can I get this new great product? This will be released very soon. It will be available via vipm.io. There will be two versions, actually. There will be a free version and a commercial version. And before you now start rolling your eyes to a commercial version, let me be clear what that means. The free version is free as in, not in beer, but free as in free software. You can download it, you can use it in your projects. There is no limitation at all for that. There were two small things that are part of the free version. One is that the main VI of the DCFG module is password protected, so you're not able to extend it to your own liking. And the second one is that there will be a very small little banner in the bottom left side of the window showing that it is a free version with a link that takes you to our product page. So yes, there are these two limitations, but the product itself is free to use in its full extent, to its full extent. The commercial version, with purchasing a license, a perpetual license for the commercial version, which is valid for your whole company, you will get the unlocked main VI of the DCFG UI module, and the banner will be removed, obviously. So that gives you the flexibility to adjust DCFG to the full extent to your customers' needs, to your own needs. And I want to specifically point out and highlight the fact that DCFG comes with your DQMH membership. So if you are an enthusiast or a trusted advisor, you can use DCFG in your own company for free without any limitations, and you get a highly discounted price for using DCFG for your end customer projects. So if you browse to the DQMH website right now, and you go to products DCFG, you can already find the purchase button that does not give you the latest release today. It will take us a little longer to actually release DCFG to the public, but it is just around the corner. So yeah, with that, I think, Matthias, I hand over to you. Let's start the demo.
Okay, so once you've installed DCFG using VI Package Manager, you're going to find these 4 packages that are installed. The DCFG example project, which is a project example that you can find in the help menu, find examples, and that showcases all the features of DCFG and really worth looking at. You have the DCFG Configuration Toolkit, which is the toolkit itself, which installs the required libraries in VI-lib and also installs the scripting tools that helps you to add DCFG to your application. And then you have 2 project templates that we'll have a look at later based on the continuous measurement and logging application, which is basically a refactor of the CMA project with DQMH, but using now DCFG instead of the settings editor DQMH module. So let's go into LabVIEW and create a new project, and we'll start by the CML project template with DCFG. So you can see what you get with DCFG. So this project template is really a very good starting point if you want to start a new application using DQMH and DCFG. You probably already know the CML project template with DQMH, which is an apples to apples comparison with the CML project template that ships with LabVIEW. And in this one, we've refactored the project using DCFG. So let's open the main and just run the application so you can see how it looks like now when you have DCFG Configuration Editor Toolkit in your application. So let's start. We have here the main UI of our application. You can calibrate your device, start an acquisition, stop the acquisition. Now when you click settings, you get the DCFG UI, which is a UI that contains on the left the list of all the possible configuration elements, and on the right contains the specific configuration elements per category. In this case, you can see that we have 4 different configuration elements. The project configuration, which contains a location name. Here it is set to Paris, but I could put Montreal and click apply, and you can see that it changed the title of my main UI. The acquisition settings, for example, if we change the calibration array and click apply, we can see that the device needs to be calibrated again. The logger config is the path where you can specify where to save your log files. And we also have a launcher config, which allows you to set that the next launch of this application should be in debug mode. So this is how it looks like. Of course, you have a restore default buttons, which will restore the defaults of the application, of the settings. And this is really what you get when you install DCFG out of the box. How does it work and how does it look like in the project? Remember, we have 4 different configuration elements. Here we can find the DCFG config class that has been created for the application level, the project level configuration. If we look in the UI, you're going to see the location name as we defined it. We also have the launcher support configuration. So that's a DCFG config class that has been added inside the library using the scripting tools. This is where we're going to find the next launch in debug mode. And then we've added DCFG to the acquisition module and the logger module. So this is the 4 places where we've added DCFG using the scripting tools. Let's see how it looks like now to add DCFG to your application. So instead of starting from the CML with DCFG project template, I'm going to start from the CML DQMH, the regular CML DQMH. So here we have created a brand new project from the template CML DQMH. Let's run it very quickly. So this is pretty much the same application. But if you click settings, you get the settings editor. This is not DCFG. This is the old style settings editor, which is actually a DQMH module. As you can see, we have here an extra module that we didn't see in the previous project templates, which is the settings editor. And that's a regular DQMH, which explores the settings of the application. Now let's say we want to refactor this a little bit and add DCFG for our logger configuration. For our logger configuration, we basically want the log file path. So I'm going to the Tools menu, DQMH Consortium, DCFG, and add DCFG support. As we discussed before, you can add DCFG to different levels of your application. It can be the project, any DQMH module, or any library. In this case, we want to add to the logger module. And I'm going to copy paste this. The configuration parameters for the logger module are going to be the log file base path. Here you can see something named configuration views. This is very useful if you want to have different type of views for your configuration. Let's say a default view and for the operator, for example, and an admin view where you would show more stuff that the operator doesn't necessarily have access to. It's something you can do here. If I add an extra view called admin, it's going to create two different UIs, two UIs that I can basically modify based on the different needs of the level of the view. Let's create a little icon for our class. I'm going to name this logger config. And the configuration item position is the position in the list of DCFG as you saw previously. This is something you can change later. No worry if you don't do it right now. So let's click OK. And now the scripting tools are in the play and are going to programmatically create everything we need to support DCFG in our logger module. Okay, so within a few steps, we are ready to continue. You can see that on the screen, we still have the default configuration constant that is visible. That's something you should definitely set. So we can, for example, use the get system directories and place the log files into the user documents folder. CML, DQMH, and my log file. Here, a little bit of cleanup, and I can now remove this label, and we're ready to go with that. You can see the logger config class has been now added to my logger module. And if I open the API tester of my logger module, we also have, let's move this below, two elements that have been added, the show DCFG toolkit and the views dropdown, which allows directly to show DCFG from the API tester. Indeed, the API tester has been scripted to start the DCFG configuration editor toolkit module. Also stop it if it was not already launched. And in case you click the show DCFG toolkit, it's going to show the panel of DCFG. And if you change the view, it's going to call the change view request. Also, whenever DCFG broadcasts that the list of views have been updated, it's going to repopulate the dropdown. All this has been scripted for you. Let's look at these views now. If I open the logger config class and go into the UIs, you can see that now we have two different UI, the default and the admin. At the moment, they are exactly the same, but I'm just going to put a slight difference on the admin one, so you can see how it looks like in reality. Okay. Let's save this and close. Okay, so now let's start my logger module using the API tester to see how it looks like. And I start the module and click Show DCFG Toolkit. And you can see that our logger configuration is displayed here. Everything has been scripted for me. And if we look in the code how it looks like, let's open the main VI of the logger module. The logger module has been scripted to start DCFG because it depends on it. When we initialize the module, we also call the init config VI. When we exit the module, we call the destroy config. And when DCFG Toolkit had broadcasted that the configuration has been committed, we make sure that that it applies to this module. And then we call the configuration committed. That has been scripted too for you, and put the configuration inside the configuration cluster that has been added to your module data cluster here. So if I want to fully refactor this module now, I can remove this old log file base path, which basically belongs to the old implementation. And instead of calling the settings editor update application settings to get the initial configuration, I just use the configuration that comes from the init config VI that has been automatically added by DCFG scripting. And to finish the refactoring, when we log the data into file, not here, when we initialize the file, we can use directly the one from the configuration. Let's see what is missing. And we have a little merge error here that we can reduce. And that's it. Okay, and the last thing I'd like to show you here is the views. Remember, we created different views for our logger config. So let's go with the logger API tester, start the module, and show DCFG Toolkit. So at the moment, we see the default view, but if I changed to the admin view, you can see that I'm now showing this UI admin where I've put my admin label. So this is how you can switch between different views with different type of access. And of course, if you wanted to show a password prompt when switching to the admin view, this is something that you can definitely do. So here we show you how you can use DCFG to add DCFG to the DQMH module. This is very similar if you want to add it to a library or on the project level. You go to DQMH, DCFG, add DCFG support, and let's say we want to add our application config at the project level, where you would put our location name. You can also create an admin view or not. Creating an icon is always a very good idea. And you click OK. And it's going to create the default config VI for you, and the class has been added directly to your project. The only thing you need to do now to show this config, this application config in DCFG, in your configuration editor, it's to call the init config at some point to register this config, and of course call the destroy config to deregister it. Let's see how it looks like if we go back to our CML with DCFG project template that we created before. If I look at the main and go to the block diagram, you can see that we start DCFG right at the beginning of the application because we need the DCFG toolkit to register our application configuration and our various modules configuration. So the DCFG toolkit should always be one of the first things you start with your application. So then you can start registering configuration and handling configuration properly. Also, we'll see that a little bit later, but the first call to the DCFG start module is where you can customize DCFG2, such as changing the configuration folder where to store the configuration files. And the DCFG wrapper, we'll discuss that later, but you can also override this DCFG wrapper class to customize even more the behavior of DCFG and the look of DCFG. And here we are calling the init configuration for our application config with the location name. Then we're calling the init config for our launcher support config, which contains the next launch in debug mode. And when we close the application, we call the destroy config. And that's just with this that you can register application project level configuration with DCFG or library level configuration with DCFG. If we look a little bit at the code on how we did handle the location name, that's very straightforward. When we initialized our module, we are getting the current config. Get current config, that's a VI that ships when the class is scripted, the DCFG config class is scripted. You get the current config and you retrieve the location name. We are registering for DCFG broadcast events in this module. So when DCFG toolkit broadcasted that the configuration has been committed, if this is the application config that has been committed, we then retrieve the configuration and again update the front panel title. That's just an example of how to implement application project level configuration into your application. Now the last thing I would like to show you is how to even further customize DCFG. For this, we are going to create a new project template, but this time use the CML DQMH with custom DCFG. Okay, so we've created DCFG so you can really customize it to your needs, to your style, add your logo, your colors, your font. To do this, you can create a child class of the DCFG wrapper. If we look in VI-lib, you're going to find the DCFG toolkit library, and it contains the DCFG wrapper class and the save load class, and of course the configuration class. The configuration class is the one that we use when we create a new configuration for your module or for your project. It creates a child of that configuration class and everything is scripted for you. The DCFG wrapper class contains a lot of things that you can override. Pretty much everything can be overridden to allow you to customize the DCFG wrapper. Let's look at an example. Here we created a custom DCFG wrapper class, and we created custom UIs for the commit part, the title, the tree with our own colors and our own code that is going to set customized colors for our elements. DCFG is actually based on different subpanels. 5 subpanels, the commit, preset, restore, title, and tree subpanels that you can all customize. So if we look at the main, when we start DCFG at the very beginning of our application, instead of leaving the default DCFG wrapper class, we are putting our custom DCFG wrapper class. That custom DCFG wrapper class, we decided to put some color elements in it that we initialize here. And now if I start the application with the custom UI, you can see that we have a DCFG UI with completely different buttons and colors and style, which gives a lot of power for you to customize DCFG and add your own branding. Another thing that you can customize with DCFG, it's the presets. You can use the default DCFG wrapper class or your custom DCFG wrapper class, but just enable the presets. What are the presets? Let me restart the application, and now I will use the default with the presets and show DCFG. And you can see that here you have new buttons. It allows you to create and manage presets. Let's say I have a specific set of configuration where I want to save to Apples and Apples folder and save this as my Apple presets. And I have another one called oranges. And this time I save it as oranges. Yeah, I probably gave this demo already, so I already had this preset created. Just going to recreate it again. And now you can go to manage presets and see that you have different presets that you can delete, rename. But here at the moment, I have the oranges presets loaded. And of course, I can load the Apples one, and it changes directly all the configuration elements that are related to that preset. So that's an extremely useful feature. If, for example, you have different type of test stations with different type of hardware, but managed with the same configuration, but different settings, you can use the presets, and that's something that comes for free out of the box with DCFG Toolkit. Another example of customization, it's the save load. By default, DCFG saves the configuration into binary files by flattening basically the configuration cluster into a variant and saving that variant as binary data into a file. If you wanted to save your configuration in a database or into JSON files, this is something, of course, you can do by creating a child class of the save load. The save load is also available in the DCFG Toolkit library, and it has some methods that you can override: the file extension, load config, and save config. So in our child class, we overridden the file extension to be JSON. And when we load the configuration, we now load it from a text file instead of a binary file. And we are also saving the configuration into a text file. Now the configuration, which is a variant here on the connector pane, but we don't expect it to be a variant. We expect it to be really a JSON file. So if we go look at the logger module and in file and save config, you can see that in the case of the custom save load, we are actually saving our configuration into JSON. And when we load the configuration in case of the custom save load, we are basically expecting a JSON string that we can unflatten and retrieve our log file base path. So this is another example of how you can customize DCFG using child classes. That's all for this demonstration today, and we hope that you liked it and that you got a nice overview of everything you can do with DCFG. And of course, feel free to ask any questions you have.
Well, thank you, Matthias, for that wonderful demo. If you have any questions, you can join the chat. Under this YouTube live, you have an option to click to join the chat, and then you have to scroll back up and right to the right of your screen, you will be able to see the chat. So if you want to add any other questions, we already had one where they're asking if the HSE template will be using DCFG, and Jörg already shared that as soon as DCFG is publicly available, the HSE template will be one of the first public applications to use it. So, all right. Now, where things get complicated, one of the things that DCFG excels at is when you have multiple basis editing configuration. And when I explain these the first time to customers, they're always like, I don't really get it. So my best example I have is this one, where the filter setting of an instrument requires to know what location you're at, but you don't necessarily want to add the dependency of your instrument of having to depend on a module that tells you what location you're at. The filter just wants to know 50 or 60 hertz. So if you have two modules, one that has the filter setting for your instrument and another one that determines where you're at, now you can have both of those report back to the application what the setting is, and now the application can externally change the filter setting based on the change of the location. This is, once you get your hands on DCFG, you'll be able to see it firsthand, but this is the part that makes it DCFG Excel, because you can change your configuration directly on the file, directly on the DQMH module itself, or through an application. Now, Matthias just showed you the two new examples. CML was meant as a comparison apples to apples with continuous measurement and login sample project that ships with LabVIEW, and it's done using an DQMH. And we have said several places in the forums and when people ask us questions that this is not how we would do configurations. And we even updated the documentation of DQMH to add what I'm highlighting there in yellow, that we would use DCFG for that. So the way we're sharing with you this example is CML with DCFG out of the box. So if that's all you want, you don't have to get to deal with classes or anything like that. You can see how it's implemented on the CML with DCFG. And then we added also the CML with customized DCFG, so you can see how far you can take it. So I recommend that when you get your hands on DCFG, you explore those examples. Okay, so what are our other offerings? Well, you probably heard already of other applications we have, like Lumos, the DCFG, the DTS. We have also a suite of VI Analyzer tests. We welcome your donations, although we really would love if you became a DQMH enthusiast member, because with the membership you support not only DQMH, but you can also get access to the free version of DCFG like we mentioned, and you can also get access to DTS and the other offerings. We also do trainings, and I don't remember what the other icons are for, so I'm gonna skip that and let Jörg talk.
Yeah, so basically, top row from left to right, we can see Lumos, our tool for monitoring communication inside DQMH in real time. We have the DTS, the DQMH test sequencer, which is we like to call the small test stand. Then we have in the middle, of course, DCFG, which you've learned about right now. We have our VI Analyzer test suite. Download, and then we have a product on our website for testing. We received a lot of those, so maybe that's something you guys want to look into. Just a little hint here. Then in the second row, we have DQMH training. Probably you're aware that this can also give those DQMH training sessions to customers. We, as the consortium, share our training material with the trusted advisors. And then we also have open source projects ongoing, one of them being the CLI for the module validator, to run module validation in your pipelines. And then, of course, we have the DQMH Consortium style guide, one of the style guides out there. The style guide goes hand in hand with our VI Analyzer test suite. So there's the upside for that. So yeah, feel free to go and look at those products on the website, dqmh.org. And moving to the next and last slide, of course, many of you will be aware of our membership programs. We have two of those by now. We have the DQMH enthusiasts, and then we have the DQMH trusted advisors. The enthusiasts are slightly less externally involved than the trusted advisors, who are supposed to be first points of contacts for customers seeking support with working with the DQMH Toolkit framework. Whereas the enthusiasts are more an internally directed group that benefit from discounts on our products, benefit from our internal chat and knowledge platform. So if you're interested in those kinds of things, please go to dqmh.org. There is a membership comparison. If you go to the membership comparison page, you will find a very elaborate table that show all the benefits of the different membership programs. I think it's important to highlight and remind you guys that the DQMH Consortium is a not-for-profit organization, right? So all the things that we are doing here and all the products that we are showing, they are all meant to support and to enable us to continue to maintain the DQMH framework and all the accompanying toolkits. So please take a deep look inside and see if you can find something that you can do for us. This goes right. Don't ask what we can do for you. Sometimes also ask what you can do for us. Okay, Matthias, cutting short. Stop the rambling, I guess. We have some resources. We'll share the slides afterwards with you guys. And I guess with that being said, the too long didn't read here really is DCFG simplifies configuration for DQMH and beyond. So in a nutshell, if you need configuration capabilities in your application, it is most probably faster to use a ready-made tool for little money than to sit develop all of these things by yourselves. Okay, that's it for the slides. That's it for the content that we guys. Let's take another quick look at the chat and see if we had any more questions here. I do not see any. Let me double check. Now is the time, guys. If there are no more questions, thank you so much for spending the time with us. You know where to find us if more questions pop up afterwards. And until then, if we don't get to talk before the end of the year, the consortium, we all wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and best to the next year. See you soon, guys. Thank you.